Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for Infinite Lagrange. This video has been sponsored by NetEase, and if you're concerned about what that means in regards to the impartiality of my content, then please do check out the link in the description below through to my Discord. I've released a public statement there. In today's video, we're going to be continuing our look at the various different ship blueprints in Infinite Lagrange by having a look at the NOMA M470 frigate. This is quite an interesting blueprint that is often maligned, but I do think it has some uses that are worth talking about. Now, if you do enjoy this video, please let me know by hitting like on it, it really helps. Subscribe to the channel for all things Infinite Lagrange, and make sure to ding that notification bell to never miss an upload. If you have a particular ship blueprint you'd like me to have a look at, please do let me know in the comment section down below as well. Also, if you want to chat about the game, head across to my Discord. Again, we've linked that already in the Discord, in the description down below, and check out the official Infinite Lagrange Discord as well. Both of those are full of people who are happy to help in any way they can regarding the game. With all that said and done then, let's jump right in to talking about the NOMA M470 frigate. So we're going to go into the ship blueprint screen and scroll all the way to the bottom to here it is. Now, first things first, I really like the design of this frigate. It's pretty sort of rugged and straight-edged, but I just like the angularity of it, if that's even a word, how angular this ship design is. I love those sort of glowing pods on the side, which I think are the UAV launch bays. It's just a really cool-looking ship, and it's one that I often hear people really disappointed that they got in a blueprint crate, and I can kind of see why, but don't be disheartened. This is not a completely useless ship. It does have some pretty powerful uses. Now, the first of the NOMA M470s you're going to get is the heavy landing ship. This is a siege type, and certainly the appearance and the fact that it's a siege type does really tie into the fact that NOMA are originally the NOMA shipping group. They are, primarily a logistics and delivery service and things like that have recently branched out into building military ships, which is reflected in their design, and I think in the fact that the first ship you're likely to get of the NOMA is a siege type. It's basically a cargo carrier that they've retrofitted to have a load of siege UAVs. Now, as you might expect from a siege ship, the firepower of this on the siege is absolutely monstrous, and that is higher DPS for siege than many destroyers and even cruisers will have. Now, siege damage is the damage that is used when firing against statistic placements. Things like privateer bases, enemy bases and outposts, even things like the various different mining arrays and stuff like that that you may come across, or indeed cities. Obviously, one of the big points of Infinite Lagrange is taking cities. Now, the ship itself doesn't really do much in the way of combat. You really don't want to put this in a fleet if you're just sending it out against enemy ships. The firepower stat of 600 there is just not great at all. Even if you fully enhance up the generic battery system, it is just not worth it. Believe me, I've tried just out of curiosity. Beyond that, though, as well, you have an absolutely pitiful air defense there of 384. It's just not worth it. This is not a combat ship in any way, shape, or form. It's got fairly decent armor and tank for a frigate. It's nothing at all special. It is entirely about that siege firepower. Now, remembering especially things like privateer bases and cities that do spawn new waves of ships if you leave them for too long, this is where the NOMA M470 actually can really come into its own. In the past, when I've gone up against a pirate installation, a privateer installation, because I'm trying to clear them off and stop them sending waves, or because I've got belts that I want to be able to harvest from inside their operation sphere, then this is a really useful ship, and having 5 to 10 of these in its own separate fleet can be really beneficial. You send in your main fleets to obliterate any of the defences, then once the actual emplacement is defenceless, you send in a fleet of NOMA M470 heavy landing ships, and they will just rip it to shreds in very quick time. Now, if that sounds like the kind of thing you want to be doing, then the enhancement track here is very obvious as how you're going to do this. First thing you're going to look at is the siege ammo enhancement, the city weak point identification, and airborne weapon maintenance. This is straight up additional damage for the siege UAVs. You're just going to be doing higher siege damage, and that is exactly what you're looking for. The only other one that really matters here is the return to battle cooldown of the UAVs in the hangar by 4%. This just means that they do a lot more damage. When they come back to refuel, they get out there quicker, which works as basically overall DPM. But if you want to enhance this, go for the damage first, then the return to battle. We really don't care about the system HP because nothing should be firing at them at that point, and the hit rate of UAVs doesn't matter. UAVs are not going to be missing an installation that they are shooting at. It just doesn't happen. As an aside, in regards to UAVs, whatever type they are, whether they are siege, whether they're support, whether they're combat UAVs, they are completely untargetable. Nothing ever shoots at UAVs. So if you're wondering what the system HP there is, that is the hit points of the actual siege pod itself. Obviously, if that takes damage, it can be destroyed. But again, you should never really be in a situation where your NOMAs are actually getting shot at. Now, this means that the original NOMA, the first blueprint you're going to get, this siege type, yes, I get it, it can be disappointing because it is such a niche use, and not a lot of people really want to be spending their command points, fleet command points, on building a whole load of heavy landing ships. The second type that I managed to unlock, however, was the support type, and this by far is one of my favourite little ships in the game, especially early on, but it does carry really well later on too. The support type is a healer ship. This is fitted with a repair UAV security system there, you can see at the bottom, and it carries repair UAVs. Now, repair UAVs operate in sort of a fleet-wide cloud. Even though the NOMA M470 support type itself is a back row ship, the UAVs will repair front and mid-row ships as well. These are very cheap. The fact that they're only 6 command points, whereas the destroyer variants are 9 command points, means you can build a few more of these here and there. They do heal ridiculously well for a ship of their size, and they're a little bit faster than some of the other alternatives might be as well. Unlocking one of these early on means that you can have these in a fleet and really support. Now, I mentioned in the Xenostinger video that I like to run a fleet that is literally 10 NOMA M470 support frigates and 10 of the Xenostinger special types, and that fleet just obliterates everything in the early game, and you could then just add to it. Those Xenostingers carry themselves really well towards endgame, as long as you get some kind of frigate tank in the front row. I reckon something like a Carillion Special or even a Carillion Recon, just to keep that sort of tanking and take the damage for those. These will then keep those tanks alive and just rip through everything else with the Xenostingers. It's a great little fleet composition that does really well. Now here you can see I have pumped my enhancements into that repair UAV pod. Basically here we start with the UAV repair effectiveness. Obviously that's what we want to go for first of all. I then sidestep into the emergency repairs. This does cost, I think it's 15 enhancement points, but basically when the ship's HP falls to 20%, all of the onboard UAVs perform self-repair and it increases their repair effectiveness by 100% for 40 seconds. What this means is that if your NOMAs, your support frigates here, are taking a little bit of incidental damage that's getting through your frontline tanks, they will pause healing other things briefly just to top themselves back up, which stops them being destroyed. Now, I like using this. Other people swear by the fact that, you know, there's no point. These are cheap enough, you can just replace them as you go, but I like to keep my fleets mobile and moving and not worry too much about them, so I go for this just to help keep them topped up. Beyond that, there are return to battle cooldown UAV skills here. You can see there's 3 of those that I personally think are worth trading into. Obviously, the more time that the UAVs are actually out and healing, the more healing they're going to do. There are, again, system HP upgrades, but again, your NOMAs shouldn't really be taking all that much firepower. I don't really rate spending enhancement points on those. And as you can see, if you just go for the straight UAV effectiveness in terms of RTB and the amount of healing they actually support, plus you then go for that self-heal one, that's all of your enhancement slots anyway taken up perfectly. I really rate the support type NOMA M470. This is by far one of the best frigates in the early game as far as I'm concerned, and it has a place in my fleets pretty much from early game right the way through to server completion. Now, the third and final type of the NOMA M470 is the anti-aircraft type. This looks almost identical to the siege type in its actual appearance, but obviously it's swapped out the standard siege UAVs for anti-aircraft UAVs, and you can see here the firepower for air defense is through the roof at 2,304. Now, how these work, if we tap here into the aircraft thing, you'll see that essentially this says can carry aircraft UAVs, and nothing really says how these actually operate in any of this. Essentially, aircraft UAVs form a cloud over the row that the ship is in. So in the case here of the NOMA M470, these are back row ships that form a cloud of anti-aircraft UAVs. That means if enemy aircraft enter your rear row, enter your back row, then these anti-aircraft UAVs will engage and open fire. So you can use this as a way to defend any of your other back row ships. this can be really, really useful, especially if you then have something like the Winged Hussar anti-aircraft type in the mid-row, or some of the other anti-aircraft in the front row as well, just to really help do sort of complete air denial. As for its upgrades, again, of course, we've got things like hit rate, which is always useful against aircraft. Aircraft are fast and tend to be difficult to hit, so upping hit rate is always good. Upping damage is going to be really useful as well. Got more hit rate and more damage there. Basically, hit rate and damage are the things to go for. Again, there is a system HP upgrade, which I really do not rate. If you're going to use this as an anti-air defense in your rear row, just go straight for the hit rate and damage. Basically, I would go 1 point in hit rate for every point in damage and try and keep those on a 50-50 ratio, because aircraft can be notoriously difficult to hit. Now, this means that even in the late game, the NOMA M470 anti-aircraft frigate can be very useful. You can have these, just a couple of these, in the rear row with whatever other ships you have in that back row, and they will help defend them against aircraft. One thing I like to do later on in the game, once we're hitting sort of the cruiser battle cruiser thing, is to have a look at any anti-aircraft ships that I have, and I make sure I've got a couple in the front row, a couple in the mid row, and a couple in the back row. And for the back row, the NOMA M470 anti-aircraft frigate is one of the better options. It's cheap to build, it's low in command points at only 6 required, and it does a pretty decent job of air superiority and protecting any friendly ships in your rear row from enemy aircraft. Now, those are the three types of the NOMA M470. The support type, in my opinion, is by far the most useful of these. It's the one you're probably going to get most mileage out of. The anti-aircraft type is often overlooked, but I do think it's really solid, especially if you need a little bit of aircraft defense in your back row. And the siege type is probably the most niche of all of them. But if you are going into a siege situation, then these are well worth building, and I don't really see many people ever using these. As I said, have a second fleet that is docked near, is moored near the installation you're attacking. You attack with the main fleet, and as soon as it is clear, you send in the NOMA M470 heavy landing ships and just rip through whatever installation, citadel, or structure it is that you're taking on. Now, those are just my thoughts and opinions there regarding the NOMA M470. Obviously, you folks may have your own experiences with them as well, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, along with suggestions on which of the ships you would like me to cover in future videos. I am hoping that soon I will be able to unlock a couple of the series variants, and I'm still hoping for the heavy cannon Eris. I would love to do videos on those, but right now, since I've not unlocked all of the variants, those are sort of on the back burner. I'm trying to go through ones that I have all of the variants unlocked, like you've seen with the Winged Hussar, like we've seen with the NOMA today, and we've had a look at the Xeno Sting, and there's plenty more of these to come, so make sure you stay subscribed to this channel, and hopefully I can help you out finding out what uses the various different ships you've managed to unlock in Infinite Lagrange are. And just before we go, it is worth pointing out that I don't believe there are any useless ships in Infinite Lagrange. I think every ship has its use. Some of them are definitely better than others, some of them are more niche than others, but you don't always have access to every single blueprint out there, and one of the big points of the game is knowing which blueprints to put in which fleet. It's looking at what you have access to and how you can create a solid fleet composition with the blueprints available to you. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this one right the way to the end. Good luck with the NOMA M470, happy sailing, and see you in Infinite Lagrange.